awesome to be in this room because in 2015, winter of 2015, I gave a presentation here. And Tom Kemper, who some of you may know, who used to be the executive director of Housing Works, was in the room. It was for Redmond Executive Association, and Tom became our first investor that allowed us to purchase the ranch property. So I've presented in here before, and so this is kind of a historic room for me. So for those of you that don't know me, just a little bit about myself. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've been working with veterans for 15 years now. I'm a military family member. My brother is still active duty, 23 years. He deployed for the invasion of Iraq in 2003 as an attack helicopter pilot. He's the reason I started working with veterans. He came home and didn't want that mission anymore, and he went medevac and did 2 more tours in Iraq as a medevac pilot. My nephew is a Marine Corps veteran who served in Afghanistan, and my mom's father was career Air Force. He was actually Army Air Corps, and then Air Force, flew C-130s in Korea and Vietnam. So I'm from Georgia originally. My other grandfather holds a world record for largemouth bass. So, and I've only lived in Georgia and Oregon. I've never lived in California, I promise. So I will try to, I'm just going to go through the slides. I'm not going to like read through every single slide, but I think it's really powerful for you to see pictures, and then the slides prompt me to kind of tell you some stories too, because we have some amazing stories. We've been operating for 6 years now. We did end up closing on the ranch property in 2015, April 20th of 2015. And so we have, as a new organization, made it to 6 years, and we're only growing and doing better every year. And we actually grew during the pandemic, which a lot of organizations, I think, either struggled or suffered for obvious reasons. But we realized very quickly, as a lot of people did a pivot, that we had 19 beautiful outdoor acres and a food production facility. So we were very fortunate, outdoor community gardens for our veterans. We were very fortunate to actually increase veteran participation during last year, and that's, again, that has continued to grow as well. So we grew 50% in staff, new programs, and also we're really, really big on partnerships with other organizations, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So I wanted to say something about the model of the ranch. This is very much a holistic model. It's a strengths-based model. In fact, we're moving away from using the word PTSD. Our primary population that we and I try to think of a better word, that we target are combat veterans. So veterans of war and veterans across the lifespan that are combat veterans. But we've been using the phrase post-traumatic growth, if you've ever heard of that. As you all know, the veteran suicide rates are staggering. They're still about 22 a day. They haven't really gone down. Is that a thunderstorm? So I personally believe that the reason why we continue to have such high suicide rates is because what we're doing clearly isn't working. And what we're doing is we're using the medical model. So I worked for 6 years in the VA. I was at the Portland VA Medical Center. I was on the PTSD clinical team. I worked out here at the Bend VA Clinic. And one of the reasons I wanted to start the ranch is because I worked with a lot of young veterans that were on 100% disability, anywhere from 70 to 100% disability. And what's somebody who's 26 years old on 100% disability and unemployable going to do for the rest of their life? So that's giving veterans meaning, purpose, community, allowing them to be able to live an actual productive life rather than just being disabled and broken. And so I really believe the model that we have is actually in some ways harming veterans. I think it's important to get your service connection and get some disability income and medical care for whatever your injuries are, physical or psychological. But I think that we need to move away from the medical model as a disease model, right? So you come home from war and all of a sudden you have a disorder and you're broken. And that doesn't help people. So post-traumatic growth is really about you have to address the trauma. You do have to address the changes that have taken place in the brain, and there are literal changes that take place in the brain. But you have to help people to grow and have a life and learn from their experiences. So this is a holistic model. It's about building community. It's about connecting veterans into healthy activities, getting them outdoors, and getting them out of isolation. And I don't know if any of you have spent much time, maybe some of you are veterans, maybe you have combat veterans in your family, but I would say the last morally just war we had was World War II. And so I get a lot of questions about why are the Vietnam vets different than the World War II vets? Why are the current vets different? We think about how people are treated when they come home, think about the popularity of the war, and also Vietnam was the first time war was televised. So people are sitting home in their living rooms watching things completely out of context and judging them. And then we have our veterans come home and get spit on. And now we do parades and we've learned a lot, we have more services, but the reality is that combat veterans still feel that the general public does not understand them. They don't understand what they've done, what they've been through, and what they're struggling with when they get home. And a lot of veterans don't actually like to be thanked for their service. This is what I hear, because they say, if you knew what I did, you wouldn't thank me. So this is why places like the ranch are so important, because veterans come here and they immediately feel a sense of belonging, they immediately feel a sense of connection, they immediately feel safe, they feel peace, and they plug into a support network that can then help them branch out further in their own lives. This young man grew up in a higher-end suburb in Portland. He graduated from the Air Force Academy. He decided he was bored with the Air Force, so he joined the Marine Corps and became a Force Recon Marine. And he came home and he had severe PTSD. I'm very good friends with his mother, and we became friends through knowing him and getting him involved at the ranch. I share his story because I also think there's a lot of stigma and assumption that all veterans are indigent or homeless, and that homelessness is the main issue that veterans struggle with. That's a small issue compared to, that's not a small issue, I shouldn't say that, but we diminish the issues that veterans have if they're not indigent, in other words, if they have income or they come from a family that had income. But what we deal with is those internal injuries, and also what moral injury, if you've heard that term. People who have done things that go against their own moral code. And that is a deep, deep wound. And so, again, very important to have places like the ranch where veterans can come and plug in. Actually, the environment itself as well is an intervention. It's incredibly beautiful. We're right in between Bend and Redmond. We're off 61st Street. Some of you have been there. Alan has been there. Ann has been there. It's a 19-acre parcel, and we have a postcard view. Not quite this good, but we have a really good view. I don't know though. It might be as good. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about our programs. One of the most significant things the additions to the ranch that we had in 2016, 2017 was our greenhouse. And so that was manufactured by Northwest Panels, and many local businesses contributed to that. And that was a Rotary project. So all of the regional Rotaries contributed to that. And so that, I'll talk about it a little more. Let me just do a broad sweep here. So Victory Gardens are our free community garden space for veterans and veteran families. Peer support. And then we have a program where we offer farming and ranching mentoring to veterans. And then we also offer some special programs, sort of weekend workshops or different types of things, including like suicide prevention. As I mentioned earlier, we're really, really big on partnerships. Right now, the Vet Center is doing all of their combat vet PTSD support groups at the ranch. We partner with Deschutes County Behavioral Health. They have a veteran peer support liaison. And also, has anybody here heard of Still Serving Counseling? So that is they're a growing group in Bend. They actually may be leasing some space from us, but they're an all-veteran counseling group. And so one of their clinicians is a Navy combat veteran and co-facilitates with our county staff. So we're able to offer services that actually don't cost us overhead. We have plenty of overhead, but we actually really benefit and thrive by those community partnerships. And also there is, we don't have an official veterans court in Deschutes County, but there's kind of an ad hoc, there's a group of folks that are working together to make sure that veterans get assistance, support, or treatment rather than just punishment for, identifying is it a military or PTSD related crime or issue. A lot of like DUIs or violence or things like that. So we have a veteran-only AA group on Fridays at the ranch, and so we're connected in with the court system, and we also really foster veterans coming to do their community service at the ranch. I spoke to a veteran yesterday in Lapine who's a Vietnam vet who's lived in this area for 8 years and never really connected into any veteran services, and really struggles with post-traumatic stress and depression, and I guess got a DUI in January and needs to do 120 hours of community service. And when I called him, you could tell he sounded pretty down and pretty kind of lost, and I started talking to him about the ranch and the sense of community and how that we have animals and we have plenty of farm work we can give him, and we have a greenhouse, and you could just tell he was getting excited and getting hopeful and looking forward to plugging into being connected to other veterans. And this is a business for us, so we sell our lettuce currently to, if you know the Greek restaurant on the north end of Bend, Kefi, it's near the Cracker Barrel. So we grow romaine lettuce, and it's a hydroponic system. It's a vertical drip system. It's a huge pain in the butt. We don't recommend it. We're offering classes. This is through an Oregon Department of Agriculture grant. It's called a Specialty Crop Block Grant. And so the idea was we would convert our greenhouse into a hydroponic system, and we would provide education to the community at large, not just veterans. So if you're interested, definitely let me know, and I have cards up here. I usually bring like a little go kit, but I'm so out of the loop of doing in-person presentations, and originally this was supposed to be a Zoom. So anyway, so we do generate revenue from the greenhouse, and this is just a program that we will continue to build and probably get more structured with some certification programs for veterans, getting actual education certificates and that type of thing. So. And then our Victory Gardens is something we're really, really excited about. We have the opportunity to allow veterans to come grow their own food. And some of them, that's Derek. Derek is a retired Marine. He flew F-18s. He helped set up Marine Special Operations Command. He's a very high-functioning veteran. Derek had never grown his own food. And Derek also has shared with me, his wife works for us now. We brought her on to help with development. And we've had many, many conversations about moral injury. And I think, again, this is something, if you look at the kind of the unseen wounds of war, we tend to think it's just these extreme cases of PTSD and that people are disabled and debilitated and, the stigma of the crazy PTSD vet. But the reality is many of our veterans are very high functioning, but they're struggling interiorly with more of the spiritual or psychological aspects, and social, because that can cause them to feel disconnected socially. So Derek grew up somewhere in the Seattle area and had never grown his own food before, and so he has a garden plot. He had one last year, he has one this year, and for me, I feel like it is incredible to be able to offer that to somebody who has served our country and done the contribution that Derek has made for this country. For us to be able to offer him that kind of experience is pretty awesome. So we do have veterans that are struggling economically. We have a veteran that's a single dad that comes out with his daughter, and he works with Kobo. He's in Kobo housing, and he comes out and he's got, I don't know the dimensions. I try to stay out of the weeds as much as possible, even though I've been in them for 6 years, but we just hired an operations manager like 2 months ago for the first time in 6 years, so I'm thrilled about that. But anyway, it's a pretty good sized garden plot, and so you can grow a pretty good amount of food there. And then our greenhouse manager is phenomenal. He's a horticulturist and just an amazing grower. So, and we have a sponsorship program. If you want to sponsor a family garden plot, it's $1,000 to sponsor a plot, and we'll put the name of the business or the organization or the individual in the garden plot for that year. And as I mentioned, we have this peer support group that we started. It's an Iraq and Afghanistan combat veteran peer support group. And John Parsons is the veteran peer support liaison with the county, and he and I have a vision to grow this as an even bigger peer support program so that the ranch becomes a hub for Central Oregon, so then all of our community partners, including like if the court system or Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, if they have a veteran that's struggling and a veteran in need, they would be able to contact us and we could connect that vet to a peer. So that's something we're really excited about continuing to grow as well. And then we have a partnership with High Desert Food and Farm Alliance to administer a USDA grant. It's called the Beginner Farmer Rancher Development Grant. So there's been a huge push, and this is actually something I've just only become more interested in over the years, is the veteran farming and small farming, small scale agriculture. And I actually had the opportunity to testify in the Senate in 2016. I got a call from one of Senator Merkley's staff, and he was the chair, the Democratic chair of the Agriculture Appropriations Committee at that time. And one of the things I spoke about at that time was that there was a lot of money going for individual veteran farmers, but not for organizations or nonprofits that were working with veterans interested in farming and ranching. And so we've seen that shift over the years. And so that's part of that Beginner Farmer Rancher Development Grant. It's not just veteran specific, but veterans are a population that the USDA is really focused on. So we feel like there will be more and more opportunity to work with the government on getting veterans more education and exposure to farming and ranching. And it's a really good fit too, because so many of our vets do have supplemental income through disability income, but they don't have a mission. They don't have a way to spend their time or be productive or be active or do something that's therapeutic and healthy. So farming is a really awesome fit for that. And so right now we are able to pay mentors through that program to work one-on-one with veterans, and we'll also be partnering with OSU Extension to offer some classes. And I don't know if anybody here knows Colton Cross and Neil Cross. They're both Marine vets, and Colton's an Iraq vet, and his dad is a 20-year retired Marine colonel, and they own R&N Construction. Their family owns the One Street Down Cafe. And so Colton has been putting in tons of hours. We've had a lot of, probably about $22,000 worth of labor, equipment use, and supplies to start to rehab our pasture. Our pasture was in poor health when we got it, and we just haven't had the resources until now to really start to develop the land. And we just got our irrigation pond in this past week for the first time in 6 years down in our lower pasture. So that was really, really, really exciting, and we're really blessed to have so much contribution and so much support from the community that really believe in what we're doing, and so many veterans who are contributing as well. And then, as I mentioned, I was talking about moral injury, and some of you might know that we have a home, Alan knows we have a home on the property that's been fully remodeled and licensed with the state as a level 2 foster home. And so the bigger picture vision is to open that home for specialized end-of-life care for veterans with combat trauma. That's a very specialized niche, but that is a area that's very, very, very close to my heart, because when I moved from the Portland VA to the Bend Clinic, I took over 4 PTSD groups that were mostly Vietnam vets. There were some Korean vets, and there were a few World War II vets. And I started to hear these veterans say things about death and dying that were pretty interesting to me. And one of them was, when I'm dying, I don't want to be around anyone, not even my own family. The only other people I would want to be around are other veterans. I also heard them say, I heard them say this independent of one another, not just in a group setting. They would say, I want to be like the Native Americans and go off in the woods and die alone. And I have to be honest, like, I just fell in love with these vets. I have a heart for the black sheep and the underdog, and so I feel like the Vietnam vets have been treated worse than any other veterans in the history of our country. And so I said, how can I create a place where younger veterans can come and find purpose and meaning and healthy activity and connect into community, and also care for their older veterans and our dying veterans. And so that's what we're working towards. That's a much bigger goal. There's nothing that exists like this in the country, and we're actually working with some consultants. One is in Chicago and one is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we have had interest from other communities about wanting to start a model like the ranch. Some of you may know about Camp Bonneville, north of Vancouver, Washington. We're talking, the city of Vancouver has inherited, it's a 4,000 acre former World War II training base. And so they're repurposing that for the community, and there's a small group of veterans, including one of the city councilors, that is interested in doing something similar to what we're doing at Central Oregon Veterans Ranch. So we're really, really excited. We're also talking to some veterans on the coast that want to start a peer support program like ours. So we feel like we've started something that's really innovative and really resonates with people, and it certainly resonates with our veterans. This is a little bit about how you can help, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but I'll just share another story with you about a veteran named Richard. I got a call from Richard's mom last year. They had just moved to the area, and she said, my son, I'm at the end of my rope. I don't know how to help my son. He's an Afghanistan veteran. He's been pretty isolated for years, and he, smokes a lot of pot, which a lot of the vets smoke for psychological and physical injury reasons, but basically not living a life, just kind of isolated. And his mom was like, we've been to the VA, we've done this, we've done that. And I said, well, does he have any interests? Like how shut down is he? And she said, well, he's interested in photography and he likes to grow things. And I said, bring him out. We'll find stuff for him to do. That's perfect. And so Richard has been coming out ever since. He works in our greenhouse every week. He kind of gets free therapy from our greenhouse manager, who's not a trained therapist. And he attends our Monday afternoon Iraq and Afghanistan combat vet peer support group. So we did a tour with some local grocery store executives about 6 months ago. And I don't usually ask veterans to speak or to say things because I'm very sensitive to not exploiting them or making them feel like, circus animals. But Richard said, I'll talk about the ranch. I love the ranch. And he's your classic vet. He's got the beard, he's got the tattoos, he's got the service dog, the whole 9 yards. And so these people come out, and we were all shocked. My staff and I had not even heard what he said, and he basically said, I've been isolated for the last 8 years. And he said, I've stayed in my room for the last 8 years, and the only time I left was to go to the bathroom, and that was usually to throw up. And then he said, until I came to the ranch. And we talked after the tour. I said, Richard, we have a lot going on out here. We have agriculture, we have the peer support, we have just being outside and being in a community of other vets. Is there any one thing here that's like the thing that works for you? Or is it how it all works together? And he said, it's how it all works together. And so sometimes I think of the ranch as like a monastery for veterans. If you think of a monastery, which is sadly a fading thing in our times, but it's a community of people that live together that have a common purpose, a common mission. They grow their own food and they take care of each other throughout their life. And that's what we have at the ranch. We have something really sacred there. Of course, it's not a religious organization, but you will hear the veterans refer to it as hallowed ground. And so these are some of the ways that you can help. That's a sculpture of Eagle Man that was donated by the widow of a Vietnam veteran, Harold Elliott. And Harold was 100% service disabled for Agent Orange-related Parkinson's as well as post-traumatic stress. And he died a few years ago. He always wanted to be at the ranch. If the house had been open, he would have been really the prototype of the type of veteran we would have taken into the house. And he did not adapt well to facilities. He moved around to a lot of different facilities because of his PTSD and combat trauma. So he donated that sculpture. So we have a peace garden, so we sell bricks for Cornerstone members for $1,000, and then also sponsoring a veteran garden plot. We do also have a program we call the Stone Soup Brigade. So Thursday is like our big work day, project day, and we have community members that make homemade food for our vets because I refuse to feed them bologna sandwiches and hot dogs all the time. They deserve good, healthy food, and so we get really amazing homemade food for our vets. And then, you can sign up through you can give me your email address today. I can get you on our newsletter list. You can sign up through our website, but stay in touch. We're on Facebook, we're on social media. But really, thank you for listening today, and thank you for your support, because many of our veterans are so isolated, and if you do feel disconnected, what the ranch does is it not only gives them a place to start to feel that connection and support, but it allows them to start moving out into the world again. And Richard has stopped smoking as much pot, and he's looking for a job. That's a success story. So we want to see, and many veterans have also said that the ranch saved their life. So this is a really, I feel very blessed to do this work and to work with people who've served our country. So, did you have a question?
You may have said, how big is the ranch?
19 acres with 12 acres of irrigation. And we have sheep, llamas, and chickens.
Cool.
So how many veterans are you serving at any one time, and are they regularly graduating from your program?
That's a good question. And then to the last part, it's a yes and a no, because they typically tend to stay connected. I mean, I've got vets that have moved to other states that still will stay connected to the ranch, or vets that will leave and come back. Right now, between all the groups that are meeting out there and our work day and other vets just coming and volunteering, we probably have at least 80 vets a week coming to the ranch.
Did you say there's some there permanently?
Not
Stay
yet.
there?
Not yet. Not until we open the house.
Okay.
And that'll be for the end-of-life care program.
Oh, okay.
Now, you talked just then and during your presentation about end-of-life care. Is it similar to, say, hospice? Do you use any resources from hospice?
We're very connected with Partners in Care. We actually started under the fiscal sponsorship of Hospice of Redmond. They opened a bank account for us. So we've been very connected in the hospice community. The difference for us is that the home on the ranch is licensed as an adult foster home. So, but typically people go to an adult foster home and they don't leave. That's where they end up dying. And so with a foster home, there's a level 1, level 2, level 3. So it will be like someone's living in their house. They will live at the ranch, but their actual medical or hospice care will be provided for, like if they want to work with Partners in Care, they want to work with St. Charles, that will be their hospice provider, because hospice is illegal in a medical term. So we don't call it a hospice house, just for those reasons. But with an adult foster home, you have 24-hour oversight. So you have caregivers living on site.
Okay, if you haven't been a veteran, can you use help?
We would probably help guide people to resources, but they wouldn't be able to live in the home.
Well, I'm thinking of some of us who have some background that might help.
Oh, you mean volunteer-wise?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. In fact, when we get, so hiring an operations manager is a key step to me being freed up to focus more on our program development and funding associated with program development, because I've been the only full-time staff for 6 years. So, so that'll free me up, and we're talking with St. Charles. We're also talking with, I've spoken to Alan about this. I've actually met with Father Todd. There's a foster home in Bend run by African nuns, and you don't have to be any religion or anything to be in that foster home, but it's the best run foster home in Central Oregon, as you would imagine, because the nuns are there for their spiritual vocation. And so we're talking with different potential partners on how to launch the program and how to deliver the best level of care. We also want to develop a volunteer program where younger combat veterans are volunteering and working with the dying vets.
Well, I'll tell you, we've only been back for a few weeks like this, but this is the best program, not just because the veterans, but the way that you have described this. I want to tell you, it's inspirational.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's powerful work, and it's amazing to survive a startup. Because I'm actually surprised very often that I'm more passionate now about what we do than I ever have been during this whole journey. So, in fact, tonight we're having. I teach part-time at the State Police Academy as well at DPSST. I co-facilitate veterans awareness. And my buddy who I teach with is a retired Marine, 20 years his active duty and then reserves, and he was a lieutenant with Salem PD. And he just took the job as a chief of Black Butte Police because he wanted to get all the craziness in the valley and in Salem. So I love working with veterans and law enforcement. It's just awesome, and they're some of the best people, you know, just really good people. And so we're having a little welcome party for Jason at the ranch this evening, and I have a Marine friend who's in town from Washington who's working with me on some specialized programming stuff for the ranch. And so we've invited some members of the law enforcement community that we know in the sheriff's office. So, you know, that's what the ranch is about too. It's a community hub and really connecting these folks that are often so isolated in these professions that really need support. So, but thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. Any other questions here?
So this was a great meeting. What if we wanted to meet out there instead of here? You got a nice grass lawn out in front of the house. Do you do that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What would we do for food? We'd bring our own box lunch or something?
Sack lunch.
Sack lunch? Okay.
Well, we could talk. We could figure that out. We'd have to coordinate it. Are your meetings the same time and same day every? Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about it. We have one of our PTSD groups that meets at 1 o'clock on Wednesdays. So we'd want to just be sensitive to spacing and privacy and that kind of thing. But in terms of the space, we actually, and some of you may know Marv Kaplan. He was the former president of Redmond Rotary, and he's a Vietnam vet. And oh gosh, I just lost what I was going to say. I met Marv when one of the Rotary clubs was out there having their lunch back in 2015.
But if we wanted to say, we're going to invite Key Club out there in the morning when it's a better time to meet, and that we would be supplying the lunch for them by ordering it through Tate and Tate or something, that would be a doable thing. Great.
What's the location of your ranch? Where's it at?
It's off 61st Street, and so it's a mile off the highway. It's like basically.
On the way to Bend.
Yeah, it's almost in between, right in between Bend and Redmond. It's like 7 miles south of here on 61st.
Left or right side of the road?
If you're going south, on the left.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for the